Hey, what's up? I'm back. I know this video is being posted on a Tuesday, but I got a lot of homework, so I want to knock that out on Monday. But I want to show you some stuff. I got some more records. I got To Pimp a Butterfly. This is probably my favorite record of all time. And then I got a bunch more King Crimson ones. I got Red, Lark's Tongues, and Aspic. I imagine the people watching these videos probably don't know who King Crimson is, but that's fine. I like him. And I got Starless in Bible Black with a beautiful inner cover. But just want to show that off because I love to show y'all them. But yeah, let's get on with the video. So yeah, welcome back to the tailgate. We had a really interesting week of college football, to say the least. So I think with just it being an interesting week, being the best way to describe it, that means we got plenty of the good stuff, plenty of winners, plenty of losers, a lot of weird stuff in the Heisman race, and then a very weird top 25. So let's get on with our winners. This is gonna be fun. The first big winner for me is Florida State, as they took down Duke 38-20. I didn't watch this game until the fourth quarter. I was watching the LSU game until that got out of hand, so then I switched over to this game. But when I wasn't watching the game, I saw Duke was up 17-7 with Riley Leonard barely playing. And I was kind of thinking that Duke has this. I thought with Riley Leonard playing, I thought that it would just be enough. I know he wasn't playing that great, but just having them opens up their offense way more than expected. But Florida State was able to rebound and finally score some points. They got a really big game out of Travis Hunter. I always get their names confused. It sucks. Jordan Travis. He played a great game. He had 3 touchdowns total. He did good on the ground and in the air, which was big for Florida State. They could not get much rushing going against that Duke defense. Duke again proves this game that their defense is a top-notch defense, but with a lack of offensive points and just a lack of good drives, their defense eventually got tired, and Florida State was able to capitalize on that, especially in the fourth quarter where they scored 21. So it's a nice win for Florida State as they continue to stay undefeated. The next winner for me is Alabama, as they took down Tennessee 34-20. This game did not go how I expected it. Tennessee had a 13-point lead going to the half, and honestly, I thought Tennessee was going to win this game. Bama's offense has been very suspect. If Tennessee's defense was playing this good, then I just thought Bama had no shot. But Bama had a complete 180. This was their best half of football they've played all season, no question about it. They outscored Tennessee by 27 points and held them to a shutout in the second half. Jalen Monroe played good. Charles McClellan played really good for them. He had 115 yards. He's been playing pretty solid for them all season. But then again, they had a good game from Monroe, and their defense really picked it up in the second half. I thought Bama had the second best, or maybe the best defense in the SEC, and I think this game proved it. Bama's looking way better since that loss to Texas and that tough win against South Florida. They've looked incredible since then. So, as an LSU fan, with them playing in 2 weeks, it's definitely interesting. You got an elite offense versus an elite defense, but I'm excited for it. And Bama, after that win, is definitely going to be back in the top 10 going into that LSU game. So, great win for Bama. The third big winner for me is Utah, as they took down USC again to win 34-32. It seems like Utah just has USC's number. Caleb Williams can't beat Utah, it seems like. Even with no Cam Rising, they couldn't. Bryson Barnes played an amazing game for Utah. Just the whole offense played really good for Utah. You had Sion Baki with a bunch of big catches. They had Jaquindon Jackson, who played really good for them. And then their defense was able to keep an elite offense in check. Not as good as Notre Dame did, but still really good. It's just impressive. It does suck for Utah, as Cam Rising will not return for the season. But with wins like this, it makes Utah still look like a playoff team or a Rose Bowl team, even without Cam Rising. It's just a really impressive job by the coaching and just the team. Utah looks really good. They knocked USC out the playoff race really early. And just, amazing. Won on a last-second kick. The hero for Utah, Cole Becker. It's crazy. Utah is one of the big winners. It's very surprising. The second biggest winner for me is Ohio State, as they took down Penn State 20-12. This game I watched in full, and I had to. I wanted to see how these two teams play with the amount of talent they had. And Ohio State looks amazing. they proved my point to me, at least, that I think Ohio State's the best team in the country with their elite defense. And I know their offense is very sporadic and can be inconsistent, but their offense played good enough, of course. Marvin Harrison Jr. was the big guy for their offense as he had 162 yards and that touchdown at the end to basically put the game away. And then the whole defense for Ohio State played amazing. Drew Aller couldn't do anything against Ohio State. I think right now is a good argument to say Ohio State has the best defense in college football. I think it's between either them, Michigan, Georgia, or Bama. But with just these nice wins against a bunch of ranked teams, I think Ohio State looks like the most impressive. Again, it's just an amazing win for Ohio State, shutting down that Penn State offense that a lot of people were thinking was going to score some points on Ohio State, and they just shut it down. So really good win for Ohio State, but they aren't my biggest winner. Overall, the biggest winner for me this week was Virginia, as they took down North Carolina 31-27 for the huge upset. This is more sentimental than anything. Virginia had that tragedy with their shooting, and to just have a big win like this against a top 10 team like North Carolina, it just means a lot to the program and to the university. Looking at the game though, they had an impressive 10-point comeback in the third quarter where, with USC up 10 against a bad Virginia team, you would think that Virginia would be done for, but they weren't. They came back, and then at the end, they had that big touchdown from Malik Washington where he just bullied a bunch of North Carolina DBs and pushed himself in for the end zone. That was huge. They kept Drake May in check. He didn't have a great game, and of course, he threw that pick at the end. But, just great win for Virginia. Just the program and the university, like I said. Amazing win. We'll see how they go through the rest of the season, but with just that big win, with all the talk about Virginia, they're definitely the biggest winner for me. To the winner goes the spoils. On to the losers. The first big loser for me is Tennessee. They blew a 13-point lead to Bama and then proceeded to lose by 14. Just the offensive change from the first half to the second half is crazy. Bama adjusted and Tennessee couldn't do anything about it. They had a really good first half from Joe Milton, but then Bama locked down on him and there was nothing else they could do. Squirrel White was playing really good and couldn't do anything. And Tennessee's defense had been playing good in the first half, was gone. Tennessee only allowed 7 points in the first half, and then they allowed 27 in the second, and their offense did nothing. So just with all that, and Tennessee looking to be out of the SEC championship race, that makes them one of the big losers for me. Especially blowing a 13-point lead and then losing by 14 to Bama. That's pretty bad. The next big loser for me is the refs versus Iowa and Minnesota. I bet that almost every college football fan, and probably just every football fan, saw it. Iowa got a punt return touchdown to take the lead against Minnesota when they were in a trap game, and it got called back for some weird ineligible catch rule. Just really stupid. Him just waving his hand off to get players away from the ball and then saying that was a fair catch call is just stupid. I don't know what those refs were thinking, and if there's the rules, and those rules need to be changed, because if the rules dictate that the refs can easily confuse waving off players for a fair catch call, then that's pretty bad, especially because it cost Iowa the game because their offense can't score any points. So they ended up losing to Minnesota, and that really puts their chances of making it to the Big Ten championship very questionable, as now they have 2 Big Ten losses. And while they are in the weak division, it still doesn't make it easier for them having 2 losses, especially with Nebraska having an easy schedule coming up. So the refs costing Iowa the game, that makes them the losers, not Iowa, the refs. It's rare to say that, but hey, anything goes here. The next big loser for me is Penn State, as they lost 12-20 against Ohio State. I talked about the game from Ohio State's side. Now from Penn State's side, Drew Aller was garbage. He'd been one of the best quarterbacks so far this season. I looked at it, he had 12 touchdowns, no picks. He'd been playing amazing. And he was the big reason that Penn State was undefeated. But this game, he just didn't show up. He went 18 for 42, that's pretty bad. That's about a 30 completion percentage, or probably a 35. It's really bad. And then less than 200 yards, and he had that one garbage time touchdown. But I don't care about that. They lost the game at that point. It didn't matter. Penn State's defense did play pretty good, but with how bad Drew Aller played, it's only so much they could do. So the lackluster offense that people have been hyping up was going to score a bunch of points on Ohio State looks pretty bad. So Penn State is one of my big losers for that. The next big loser for me is North Carolina, as they lost to Virginia. I did bring up that this is a great win for Virginia, but looking for North Carolina's side, they shouldn't have lost this game. Virginia was 1-5. They were really bad. They had some really bad losses to James Madison and some other teams. And then looking at from North Carolina, they were undefeated. They were ranked in the top 10 for the first time in a few years. They were ranked in the top 10 during the COVID year. But this is really the first time they were truly a top 10 team, I think, for a good while. In this game, they lost. They blew a 10-point lead, which is really bad against Virginia. Drake May didn't play that great. They ruined a great performance from Devontae Walker, who had 146 yards and a touchdown. They ruined a great performance from him. And I mean, North Carolina's suspect defense showed the bad side of it. Their offense, who has been hot and cold, was cold. It just looks really bad. And I think it's so bad that just that one loss, that even if they win out and win the ACC championship game, I still don't think it'll be enough to make the playoffs, just because that one loss sticks out so much, and just how good the other conferences are doing, who knows. So that makes North Carolina one of my biggest losers, but not my biggest. The biggest loser for me is Michigan State, and I have a good feeling y'all know what I'm talking about. They posted a little trivia thing on their Jumbotron pregame, and it was a trivia question about Hitler. Why? It's just bad. Bringing up Hitler during a football game is never a great idea to begin with, and I hate being political and just talking about world issues right now, but especially what's going on in Israel, with there being a whole war. So you have kind of like you have Israel and a lot of Jewish people fighting and getting attacked right now. It makes it look really bad. It's hard to understand just how stupid Michigan State's people have to be to put that on the Jumbotron during this time. Just even in general, you'd be an idiot for having a Hitler-related question during a football game. But just with what's going on in the world right now, it makes it look way worse than it ever could have been. They already fired the quiz guy. They've got a bunch of lawsuits on their hands. Michigan State's been a whole mess this whole season, and this might just be the ultimate cherry on top. So yeah, they're definitely the biggest loser. Why? That's all I gotta say. Yeah, so what a way to wrap up the losers. But let's go ahead and flip that over. Let's go to the Heismans, who I think are in the running right now. Penix played a pretty bad game against Arizona, and they almost lost that game. They won on a pick six. So I definitely think that the big Heisman gap that I was talking about, it's definitely shrunk. So I still think he's the best quarterback in the country, and I still think he's number one. But Jane Daniels has gone up a little bit closer. Of course, I think it all depends if he beats Bama or not. If he beats Bama, then I think he's right there. But I think there's still a good sized gap. And I don't understand why ESPN was saying JJ McCartney is number one. That is stupid. He's good. He's not even touching Jane Daniels and Penix. Just no, he's not even close. But after that game against Michigan State, he definitely is in the running, I think, now. I think he's taking Drake May's spot. And then you of course have Jordan Travis, he's in there. Quinn Ewers is out of there by now. With that injury and him missing some games, his chance of winning the Heisman is over. So Quinn Ewers is out of there. Caleb Williams is still in there, but he is way back now with those two really bad losses. That really hurts his chances of winning the Heisman, but he's still in the running, of course. So the list is definitely dropping. Shador is in there still. He's playing amazing. Just Colorado just kind of sucks. That's really all I can say. But I really think those are your Heismans right now. I think it's still Penix and Jane Daniels at the 1 and 2. And it really just a mess of quarterbacks. You know, Shador Sanders, Caleb Williams, Bo Nix. Just a bunch of interesting stuff. Like I said, this whole week was weird, but those are the Heismans as loosely as I could describe it. To wrap it up, we got the polls. Of course, you know the difference between mine and the AP. The AP has the nicer graphics, as always. Looking at the top 10, they're actually extremely similar. There's only one team that I have in the top 10 that the polls doesn't. but we'll go into that later. Top 4, of course, same team, just ranked differently. Ohio State proved to me that they're the best team in the country, so I still have them at 1 with Georgia at 2, and then Florida State at 3 and Michigan at 4. The polls have it ranked a little bit differently, of course. It's been the same with Georgia at 1, Michigan at 2, Ohio State at 3, and Florida State at 4. I don't agree with Ohio State being 3 though. I think they should at least be 2 after their win against Penn State. However, after that, when you look at 5 through 9, my polls match the AP exactly, with Washington at the 5, Oklahoma at the 6, Texas at the 7, Oregon at 8, Bama at 9. The only difference is, like I said, I have Utah at 10. Really impressive win against USC with the backup quarterback. I had them ranked higher than the polls already did, so that jumped to 10, which is natural with some top 10 teams losing. For them, they have Penn State at 10, which I didn't agree with, but I still have Penn State really close to the top 10, so it's not too far off. I just thought Utah, after their win, just looks like a better team in my opinion. So that's the top 10. 11 through 15 is also fairly similar. Penn State is at 11 compared to 10 in the polls, but that isn't a huge difference. But with Utah being the top 10 and Penn State being at 11, there are slight differences, just by 1 or 2. And the 2 major ones are Oregon State being at 12 in my polls compared to 11, and Ole Miss being at 13 compared to 12. It's not a huge difference, but it is there. Since Utah isn't ranked 13th in my polls, that explains the change. However, Notre Dame and LSU are still ranked at 14 and 15, so that matches up at the end. My polls are very similar, so I really don't have much to talk about in this week. It is really weird. The polls are starting to line up, which is fun. 16 through 20 almost has most of the same teams. They're just slightly ranked in different spots, and of course I think I have 1 team missing. I do have Missouri at 16. They're right under LSU. Of course, they're 7-1, but their 1 loss is at LSU, so it's just naturally to be ranked 1 spot under LSU. And that's where the polls have them, so it's a good spot for them. I have Louisville at 17, North Carolina at 18. They're swapped in the polls. That's because North Carolina had a really bad loss. I think their loss was worse to the point where I think Louisville's a better team right now. Louisville is second in the ACC, and just with that bad loss, I think it's fair to put Louisville ahead of North Carolina, just for right now at least. We'll see how it goes as the season progresses. I have Air Force at 19, similar with the polls. It wasn't a very pretty win against Navy, but they did win, and with a lot of teams in the 15 through 20 range losing, I thought it was fair to give Air Force that huge jump. And I have Tennessee at 20 compared to 21 in the polls. That mainly comes from me having Duke ranked a good bit lower than the polls, so Tennessee has that one little hiccup, and they're ranked a little bit higher at 20. 21 through 25 has my most aggressive changes compared to the polls. I have Tulane at 21 instead of 22. Again, that mainly comes from just where Duke is ranked. So Tulane gets a little bit of a higher jump, and I had Tulane ranked higher anyways in my polls to begin with. So I think, actually, let me look. Yeah, I had them ranked lower. Weird. But that's just mainly because of the Duke loss that I have Tulane ranked a little bit higher at 21, so not a huge difference. I have USC at 22 compared to 24. That's just because the teams I have entering the polls, I don't think are better than USC. I know USC is coming off 2 really bad losses, but I still think they're better than the teams below them. So that's just why I have them ranked at 22. At 23, I have Florida. They're on a bye, but I really didn't have a reason to drop them out the rankings, in my opinion. I thought 23 was right. Just with all the teams losing, too, they really had no reason for me to knock them out. 24, I have Oklahoma State. This is one of the few teams I have ranked that the polls don't. Actually, I think this is the only team I have ranked that the polls don't. Oklahoma State has a really, really impressive last 3 games to me, especially with Ollie Gordon balling out against West Virginia. I think Oklahoma State does look like a ranked team right now. It's surprising. Like I said it last week, where Oklahoma State's looked like one of the worst teams in the country a few weeks ago, and now they look pretty solid, and I think they should be in the rankings because they're just a 3-game win streak against some pretty solid teams looks really impressive. So I have them right there at 24. And rounding out my polls at 25, I have Duke. Duke is ranked at 25 because I had them ranked lower than the polls, and the polls have them ranked, and it was a pretty nice game against Florida State. Unfortunately, they did slow down in the 4th quarter, but they held on way longer than I thought they would, especially with Riley Leonard not playing 100% and him not even playing the full game to begin with. Duke is still a really good team with an amazing defense, so I think they still deserve the top 25 spot. Just barely etching out James Madison at UCLA, who would be right there at 26 and 27 if that spot did exist. If you want to look at the polls more in depth, feel free to pause, but that wraps up the recap video. So yeah, that's the video. I hope y'all enjoy it. I know it's coming out on a Tuesday. Unfortunately, I have some homework that I want to knock out on Monday, so I got no time to edit. But don't worry, I'll be out Tuesday when I have some time to edit. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like, favorite, subscribe if you had, and I'll be back to do the recap tomorrow or Wednesday, however you want to say it. That was a terrible snap. Replicating that one video.